I'll let you decide which topic I'm going to let you to choose which topic we talk now.
I would like to address just a couple of misunderstandings about what people have regarding Hume's guillotine, something you and I kind of mentioned. And I want to help people to understand objective morality from the secular position, because I debate this topic all the time, not just with Christians, but also with fellow atheists who are into philosophy, because they believe that morality is subjective. Now, I want to be very clear, whether morality is objective or subjective doesn't really matter, because it's a fun thing for us to think about and to debate in philosophy. What really matters is how are we going to treat each other, right? That's really what's important. So as far as objective versus subjective, this is just a way to discuss philosophy and some wonderful ideas. And I hear people misunderstand the conversation completely around morality, because people say, well, what is morality grounded in? How can it be objective? What's it grounded in? And that's a very simple answer. But what happens is people shift the conversation from the grounding of morality, which is an ontological question, or the ontology, right, to the normative, what ought we do and ought not do. So we need to understand that those are two different concepts. The grounding of something and the normative claim are not the same conversation. We can ground morality objectively in nature and the laws of cause and effect and evolution. We evolved to be a social species. So this is our grounding right here. And there's mind independent. And so it's objective. To get to the normative, the what ought we do, sometimes we have to deal with what's called Hume's guillotine. It's known as the is ought problem, right? And there's a whole conversation to be had around that. Richard Carrier has done a wonderful job of breaking this down for people to help them understand that. And he relies on Kant to do this, actually. So that's really what Carrier is leading into, is Immanuel Kant's attack of Hume, using the hypothetical imperative. When we incorporate the if, we know how to get the ought from the is. And the truth of the matter, as Carrier has pointed out, almost all of our oughts actually come down to an is at some point, right? Because everything is ultimately going to be based in some objective truth. So to say you cannot get an ought from an is a misunderstanding of Hume and a misunderstanding of how any ought comes to be. So we incorporate the hypothetical imperative, and Richard Carrier has a famous example which works really well. If a surgeon wants to perform a successful surgery, he ought to sterilize his equipment, right? So whether or not the surgeon wants to perform the successful surgery is subjective, but it's safe to assume that a surgeon does want to do this because they invest a lot of money. They sign a Hippocratic oath that says, I will do no harm, and so on and so forth. But we cannot say 100% that's going to be their goal, because all goals are subjective, right? So it is a subjective goal that the surgeon does want to perform the successful surgery. Once that goal is established, you can get objective facts, and because objective is both stance independent, or any true fact is also objective, right? So it's a true fact that sterilizing your surgical equipment is significantly going to reduce your chance of introducing an infection. So you have objective facts attached to a subjective goal. The facts themselves, the action of what he's going to do is sterilize his equipment. When it comes to morality, morality is not a goal. People misunderstand this. Morality is an action. It's ought. What ought I do or ought not do? That's specifically talking about action, verbs, adverbs, right? Attach it to a noun. What ought I do? The goal is subjective. Now, the goal that relates to morality is cooperation. So if we want to live in a society that focuses on cooperation, I ought not steal from people. And I can get that becomes an objective fact. So we can get to the normative of what we ought not do using true facts, which are objective. So we have objective morality, the grounding, and we have the objective morality as the normative behavior when we go through the hypothetical imperative.
So I do have a couple of comments. I think the first comment has to do with recently Sam Harris did a debate with Rich Dawkins, and the Rich Dawkins Foundation, now it's called, I think, the Inquiry Institute. They gave Sam Harris a prize, which is a kind of big prize they give to people that defend critical thinking. Some of the people that received this prize was like Daniel Leeroy. Then Rich Dawkins asked Sam Harris precisely about the guillotine. Harris believed that this guillotine, people take it like it's a law of nature. He says that it's not a law of nature. People are like somehow kill themselves because David Hume created a kind of rule, a kind of, let's say, a rule a long time ago that you cannot derive out to from fact. Sam Harris basically says that we can ground morality on science, like neuroscience, empirical facts, so on. So basically, Sam Harris decided not to solve the problem. He decided just to say that this problem, we are killing ourselves for something that somebody said in the past, like you cannot. He basically said that the guillotine is let's say, it's fake. It's like you don't have to respect the guillotine. The second point I'd like to, then I give you the space to reply. I have to check that, but I have the feeling that Richard Carrot, he kind of, let's say, destroyed Kant, because if I remember well, you said that he based his work on Kant. I think I have to check that, but I think it was the opposite, because he gave an example in his paper. He gave an example of Kant. Kant basically said that there is a kind of imperative, like why should not steal, for example. I'm just giving a random example here. Why should not steal? Then you ask yourself, so why should not steal? Kant basically said that because you want to be a good person, that's all. Basically, if I remember well, Richard Carroll called this bullshit, because like Emmanuel Kant just create a kind of imperative that you should do just because you want to be a good person. That's all. He called, like, if I remember well, I have to double check on his paper, but if I remember how he called that a bullshit. So I think
I'm sorry, I did not mean to interrupt.
No, you can go on.
Yeah. So there is something really important to understand here. When I mentioned that Carrier pulled this from Kant, the hypothetical imperative was Kant's thing, and Carrier's using the same thing, the hypothetical imperative.
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
Kant was using, that Carrier and a lot of people who reject Kant had two different models. He called the hypothetical imperative and what he called the categorical imperative. And it's the categorical imperative that it's just simply something is true in all cases, whereas we know that things are always going to be relative. So we cannot just say it's more of a, Kant's has more of a deontological approach with the categorical imperative. And I think that's what Carrier and a lot of people reject. A lot of people who believe in objective morality actually reject that.
I think he rejects the idea that you have something that you have to do because you have to do. Because somehow Kurt, if I remember well, Kurt said like, why you should be a good person? Because you have to. Like there is no just because like a cosmic you decide. There's because the model of Richard Carrier is based on a game theory, like the prisoner game. Like he basically saying that there is a physics of morality, that mathematically it's better that you be a moral person than you not being a moral person. It's like the example of, you gave the example of the surgery, but he gave another example as well. If my memory serves me well, he gave an example of being healthy. Why should I eat this way? Because you want to be healthy. So of course you can do otherwise, but if you are a logical person, well informed, if you go, the moral thing to do is to eat in a good way. He gave the example of a vegan, like vegetarian. You can eat meat, but somehow you have to know that you are being immoral, because it's not about it. You said something like. You said as well that morality does not have a goal. I have the feeling that the model of Carrier is the opposite, because Carrier has three components. First, you have to be a rational agent. You need to be able to think. A baby cannot be moral immoral because a bird, if a bird shit your head, you can't say the bird is immoral because the bird has no
Right.
nothing. It needs to be well informed. And then I gave to Rich Kerr the example of Donald Trump in his followers because they are badly informed. So Kerr agreed with me. The third one, Kerr said that you need to have a goal. Then here come a bigger kind of a fight I had with Rich Kerr by email. I mean, you have a disagreement by email because of that. Kerry wrote a blog post a long time ago. He debated Christopher DiCarlo. He wrote a book in 2019, 2019. He wrote a blog post about a debate with Christopher DiCarlo. Sadly, the debate is not online anymore. I asked Rich Carroll for a copy of the debate. The debate is not available anymore. But I was able to find the book. DiCarlo just published the book like this year called The Building a God. So this agreement was like that. Rich Carroll believed that because I wrote a blog post, it was a provocative to Rich Carroll. I don't know if he was very happy, but anyway, I provoked him because he wrote his blog post claimed that AI cannot be moral. AI cannot be a god of moral. My thesis is the opposite, the other way around. AI, according to Rich, if you take the model of Rich Carroll from his paper from 2025, then he described precisely AI. But people say AI does not have a goal. But you can build a goal on AI. You can give AI the example of that you previously on this live. I gave the example of the AI talking about religion. AI right now does not talk about religion spontaneously. That's because they gave AI a goal not to talk about a polemic topic. Religion is a polemic topic. So my point is, if I understood well the work of Rich Carroll used morality as a goal oriented.
Yeah, that's really interesting because there's a lot to unpack there. I think that it's really. First of all, I agree very much with what Richard Carrier is saying, and I will also say that Richard Carrier, I believe it's a cosmological argument ultimately that he's using to describe this objective moral approach. And he's tapping into other ideas like at this point we all are doing. There's nothing new under the sun in 2026. Right? We have
like the Bible. We just cited it up in the Bible.
It's true. It's true. Absolutely. So we are all tapping into some. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, as we like to say. Right? People before us have done so much of the work. So we're looking at now when we talk about reason, and it's really important to understand this because this is really important. To it gets a lot of people get hung up on this. When we talk about what is the normative, right? What people ought to do, the reason they call it normative is because it's like normal, and normal is going to be based on an average, right? What is the normal thing to do? And that's only accessible to people who have the ability to think and reason logically, right? If you don't have the capacity to reason, you don't understand what is normal. You don't have access to it. So the normative claim, it would be like a judge there. If you're in court and the judge is going to rule on your behavior and you say, I had to shoot the man coming into my house because I felt like my life was in danger. My children's lives was in danger. The judge is going to say, what would a normal, rational person in this same situation, would they feel like their life is in danger? Their children are in danger? Well, yes, absolutely. The man is breaking into your house, you have this fear. Do you protect your family? Anything like this, what is a rational, normal person going to do? That's what the judge is going to base this against, what the jury is going to consider. What would that's what the normative is. So when we come to moral judgments, what ought I do? Well, is what ought a reasoning person do? A person who has a capacity to reason. A child cannot do this. A small child can't do this. There are adults who have dissociative or different types of mental disorders, antisocial personality disorder, for example, right? They don't have access to empathy. Their emotions don't work because the emotions come from inside the brain, right? And so they don't have access to morality. We don't make our moral decisions based on what would that person do? What would a psychopath do? No, we base it on what would a normal, rational. So the reasoning comes into play. When we talk reasoning, we're going all the way back to Aristotelian logic, right? Aristotelian ethics. And when he talked about virtue ethics and how do we understand what the virtues are, and reasoning gives us access to the morality. So Carrier's tapping into something that's well established. Ayn Rand, the objectivist, who has a completely different opinion about a lot of things with her views on capitalism and egoism, she has objectivism for the moral position. And she states that it is a human beings' ultimate purpose and ultimate quality is their ability to reason, and they need their freedom in order to be able to do this. So freedom and well-being is something that a lot of different people tap into. Sam Harris built this on flourishing, right? Human flourishing and the flourishing of the individual is going to be freedom and well-being is a necessary precondition for anybody to flourish. So they're all tapping into very similar roots of all this to come to the same conclusion that morality is indeed objective. They say all roads lead to Rome. The one thing I would say to push back a little bit is that a goal is going to be a value judgment, and all values are subjective. We can get a computer to spit out values, but that's after we have determined what the values are, right? So
that's the point that's the point of Sam Harris, because people criticize Sam Harris because Sam Harris has chosen well-being, like the goal is to optimize well-being. Like people say, why well-being? Like he says you have to choose something. You have to pick, like bootstrap yourself. You have to. A biologist cannot define what's life, but he still can do his work. A medical doctor cannot define what's a healthy state, but he still can do his work. Like that's the point of Sam Harris. Like you have to define somehow. And Christian do as well. Christian, they the only difference that they like they give to a third party, like God. They decide, like what's sin? Sin is when you go against God. So you are doing the same shit. Like you are just choosing a different reference.
well, the reason that Christians are so dangerous, as opposed to like the Jews, for example, is because when it comes to Jews, especially Orthodoxy, the Jews had 613 Mosaic laws, clearly written out what they ought do and ought not do. Now, some of those laws are very dangerous because they promote slavery and misogyny and child abuse and such. But at least we know what we're working with because it's clearly written down. When it comes to Christianity, and that you look throughout the New Testament, there's no codification of any particular set of laws. You get a little bit of hints like, oh, you should be loving, you should be kind, you should be patient, but those are all subjective values. What I think is loving is going to be completely different from what you think is loving, and it's going to be completely different than what my neighbor thinks is loving. Patience, same thing. All these different things are just values, and we individually come up with our own definition. So when you ask the Christian, what are the rules? Some Christians will say, oh, gay marriage is a sin. Other Christians will say, oh, it doesn't really matter. Gay marriage is fine, because there's no codification of any of these things. So the Christians are literally just making shit up as they go along, which is why I like to say that even though we say there's over 45,000 different types of Christianity, if there's about roughly 2 billion people on the planet are Christians, there's 2 billion different types of Christianity.
I don't know if you saw there is a series. There is a series called, I think, Midnight something. It's a series, a TV series, in which I think was four season. Basically, what the guy did, they were very smart. They took the Bible. They decided that Jesus would be a kind of vampire, a monster, a vampire. They have proven with 4 seasons that they fit very well, like the part like eat my blood, my flesh. The guy was I think it was very creative because they have shown that it's not hard for you to fit anything in the Bible, like a vampire, like a monster vampire, you can fit.
Yeah. That's brilliant. First of all, I've never heard that before, and it's absolutely brilliant. But it does go to show you
midnight missions. I don't know. I think it's worth it. Like they started atheist. Atheist in the beginning. The atheist. He was drunk. Then he hit someone. He killed someone. He killed a very young woman. He was very bad. but then he was sent to live with his parents. But his parents was very religion in a very small town in the United States, very religion. Then he had to go to church, so on. I think it's a very good one.
Yeah, it just goes to show just how open to interpretation the Bible is. And I mentioned this before in our conversation, and just repeat it really quick in case anybody's tuning in right now. Sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice. In these debates, when I debate biblical morality, the very first thing I do is talk about how disjointed and disconnected the Bible actually is. You cannot get a solid foundation of what is moral behavior and what is not moral behavior. So it's really up to interpretation. And that's why you should not use the Bible to try to explain any of your moral positions, because everyone's going to have a different interpretation of what it is. It's not an objective source if it's so open to interpretation.
Yes, yeah, you can go on because I let you to conduct the conversation. Now it's you. We stop you want to talk about. It's up to you.
Yeah, my voice is actually, I'm starting to lose my voice. We should probably start to wind it down. My tea is worn off. But I do want to encourage people to understand that when it comes to gauging the Bible and what we see, and this goes for any religion, it doesn't have to be just about Christianity or Islam or Judaism, any religion whatsoever. When you have a particular event happening, and we can use the Bible because we've been talking about it tonight so much. So like with the Amalekite situation, God tells Saul in 1 Samuel, I believe it's chapter 15, he tells Saul, I want you to go kill the Amalekites. You're going to destroy them, utterly destroy them. You're going to kill the men, the women, the children, even the animals. Everybody, wipe them out. Complete genocide. Well, we can look at that story and we can say from an outside perspective, because we have empathy as human beings, right? We don't need a God to tell us what's right and wrong per se, because we have a conscience. If we're rational, reasonable people, we know how we would want to be treated. We know how we'd want other people to treat us. Even if we were soldiers, if I was a soldier going to battle to fight for something that I believed was important enough to kill somebody over, I would never want to kill the children or the women, the non-combatants. I know better than this, right? And we know better as human beings. So we have the ability to make these judgments based on human nature. Just
But
because God says,
I have this feeling that sometimes recently I have a band. It's a digital band. It's an AI band in which I do music. I do so on. I wrote a song about the I think I don't know in English Jephthah, the Jephthah, the daughter of Jephthah. You say Jephthah in
oh yeah,
Portuguese. Basically, the story of a father that he make a promise. If
yeah.
he wins the war, he'll kill the first one that he just go out on the door. He decided to kill his daughter. Then the music was. I think the saddest music that I have read so far. It makes me cry sometimes when I see the music, when I see the clip I created using AI. I create Jephthah, his daughter using AI. It makes me cry sometimes when I hear this music. It's on the channel. But the point is that my channel was like that. In the music, I try to imagine what if a modern father today, a modern father has to kill his own daughter. The music was basically because of that. Sometimes you take the feeling of today and try to put in the past. Maybe the past it made sense. Maybe because for the concept of children, it's recent. It's the idea of the children, like there's a children, adult people. It's a new concept. So maybe in the past, when the Bible was written, because we have to separate the concept of God and the story of the Bible. Maybe the story of the Bible they happened. Maybe the story is based on true fact, especially the Old Testament. The Old Testament. The Old Testament is also about like maybe in the past there was a tribe in which if you made a promise to God, you had to follow the promise. And his daughter, or anyone like Job, Job lost everything, like his son. He got back his wealth. Some Christian they never ask what happened with the children, like 10 children. Maybe in the past it was okay for you to lose a children, but today it's not. But my point is, maybe the past was okay for you to kill everyone. Like it made sense in the past.
Well, that is the truth of it, and that's really unfortunate. But that is the reality of it: is that women and children both were seen as property, and it was this is how they were treated, as property, and the child was an investment in what the man who had the wealth, he was making an investment in himself, right? And so he would raise his children to help on the farm, or he would teach his child a trade. So if the man was a cobbler or an architect, a builder, his child would become the builder, the son would. If he had a daughter, the value of the daughter was in her virginity. So that virginity was the value that little girl possessed. And because it's all about property, the wife was the property of the man, and he could literally sell her as a concubine to another man to pay off his own debts, because this was just property to them. They didn't understand the moral implications. When you talk about, it's not just Jephthah, but you talk about one of the most famous stories would be Abraham and Isaac,
Yes,
right?
I
God
have a
said,
song
no,
about that. I have a song
yeah.
about that as well. I heavy metal. I do not heavy metal about that. I did the same. I did that kind of trying to imagine. Imagine if we're talking. The music is as well. I'm trying to imagine someone talk to his own head, like his fight. Like I don't want to kill my son. I don't want to kill my son. God say you have to kill because I wanted to kill. I try to play around because imagine today you receive a message: kill your son to prove your love to me. It would be very bizarre.
That's what I try to talk to people about. Like, we have the ability today, using all the tools that we've developed over the last 10,000 years, right? For not just agriculture, scientific method, but developing ethics and human empathy, and really understanding the value that we have as human beings, the value that you possess as a human being with your own freedom and well-being actually adds value to my life, even though we're living so far away, right? North America to South America. And so we understanding the world is so small. They used to think that the world was only Mesopotamia and the Fertile Crescent, maybe part of Northern Africa, right? That was the entire world to them, to this culture that's writing these books. They had no idea there was an entire continent on the other side of the ocean. No idea whatsoever. They had no idea there's this place called Australia. They just didn't understand these things. So as we now understand, not only do these other places exist, but the planet is actually very small, like relatively speaking. It's as you get older and wiser, you start to understand that, oh my gosh, the world is very small. Because when you're a small child, you think your house, your living room is so big, and then you think your neighborhood is so big, and pretty soon your house and your neighborhood is not that big because you're able to travel on a bicycle, and now it's your city and you're driving a car, and now you can go from city to city, and then you get into an airplane for the first time and you go to another country and you realize the world is not big. It's very small. Everything is connected, but it's only because of progression of science and our ability to look back at enough history of bad decision making compared to good decisions. That's when we now have the basis to reject these religious claims and say, no, we don't have to defend these claims. They're insane. To say that it would be justified to send somebody to hell for eternity is insane. There's no apologetic philosophically that can make that make sense. Killing women and children that are non-combatant doesn't make any sense.
They try
Yeah.
to they say that you are prepare yourself to God, like preparation. They try.
It just doesn't hold up to today's understanding. And that's what scares me and makes me sad, is that there are people who know, it's the cognitive dissonance, right? They know in their head they're supposed to say that God knows best. They know in their head they're supposed to justify anything God does must be good by definition, because that's what God is supposed to be. And so they will continue to say these things, even though in their heart they know that this is not good.
Yes, that's what sometimes kills me. Sometimes I feel bad when I see a scientist like Rich Dawkins. Rich Dawkins said once why he will never debate William Craig. William Craig is not stupid. As far as I could see, he's very smart. But Rich Dawkins said I have never seen this debate, but I have never watched the debate. But according to Rich Dawkins, William Craig defended the Amalekite. Not the Amalekite, it was I think it was another genocide in which William Craig said that the children will go to heaven. Like they were killed, but God will send it to heaven. Then Rich Dog said, that's my limit. I cannot go deeper than that. So when I see like Francis Collins, which I debated with Richard Carey, I talk about a lot about Richard Collins, Francis Collins, John Lennox. Those people, they're not stupid. I mean, but sometimes when you see those people defend Christianity, because the first time I saw John Lennox, I thought he's a mathematician at Oxford. This guy must be smart. But when he talks about Christianity, he's as stupid as any pastor. I mean, it's bizarre to see him talking.
It's so true. And that's exactly what cognitive dissonance is, right? It's when your emotions are telling you that what you're saying is wrong, but you're still insisting that it must be right. Right? It's not.
Yeah, but I even have this feeling somehow maybe he knows what he's doing because he's smart, but somehow he believes somehow in his head that Christianity is good. So I know it's not true, but it's good. Because it's impossible to imagine someone to be a professor at Oxford, a very high university, and the guy believed that Jesus exists, Jesus rose from the dead. Like I think I can't understand why people would do that.
Yeah, it's this. Well, because now I don't know what your position on free will is, but I do not believe in free will.
I saw you post a video.
I don't think the free will thing holds up. I'm a compatibilist or a soft determinist myself, but I think the debate is only between soft determinism or hard determinism. I don't think free will is even in the conversation, personally, but it depends on a person's perspective on free will, because I know that Christians in particular will try to use free will as an excuse for suffering. Why is suffering in the world? Oh, well, because we got to have free will. But these are just really bad apologetics.
Why slavery? Why slavery? Because you have free will. Why?
You got to have free will.
The people is raped.
The economy, as you mentioned,
free will.
Yeah, the economy would crash if there weren't these slaves around. Which is ridiculous because we abolished slavery and no economies crashed as a result. And we can look at that historically.
But the fact that they have maybe if you are not talking about a God, like maybe it's true if you abolish slavery before economy would crash. But the point is not that. The point is that it's a God. But a God can create anything. They could create an economy that does not depend on slavery. They could do anything. But that's the point. The point is not that maybe the economy would crash in the beginning when the economy was started. Slavery was necessary. I'm not saying that's good. I'm saying that maybe they needed slavery. But the problem that you try to justify that a God that you are all powerful could not do otherwise. That's the problem for me.
Like he could have had the slaves go free, and every time a slave walks away from a house, poof, a big bag of silver just appears out of nowhere, like the manna coming down from the sky. Right? Could have fixed the economy right there. Everybody's rich. He could have done away with the need for money. No, this is because
there is this example. Alex Conner. Alex Conner was debating on the Jubilee. I think it was Jubilee. He was debating several Christians, and he was debating a Mormon. And the Mormon was trying to explain that why do we suffer here? You see, people have to suffer. He was saying that God has a place for us after that, but it's necessary to suffer now, because God is waiting for us on the other side. And Alex O'Connor said in a very brilliant way, imagine that you have a treatment for cancer, two treatments. One has a very big side effect. The one has no pain. Why should I choose the one with side effect? Why cannot choose the one that has no side effect? If God is all powerful, why God has to do a world that's full of suffering? I mean, it makes no sense.
No, it doesn't make sense. It introduces almost all of the arguments that Christians make. Well, they're all fallacious, and that's what you have to know the informal and informal logic to be able to explain where the fallacies lay. But what most often happens, and what you're talking about right now, is they introduce what's called the black and white fallacy, or the false dichotomy. It had to be this way, or this is the result. But there's a million different choices in the middle that they just refuse to acknowledge are even part of the conversation. But logically speaking, so like slavery, they say, well, why did you have to take the virgin women as slaves if you're killing everybody else? Oh, because
yes, I even heard a very bizarre argument in a debate. Christians said that in the past people volunteer themselves to be slave because some people volunteer to be slave. Therefore, slavery was good.
No, that's bullshit, and that doesn't line up with the text or historically. But when it comes to like taking the women, for example, they would say, "Oh, well, if the soldiers just after they killed all the men, if they just left, those women would have died in the desert by themselves." And I said, "Wait a minute. So you have to make them your wife? Why don't they just send them resources? Why don't they just rebuild their town for them? Why don't they help them relocate? Why do you have to say, well, it's either make them a sex slave or they would die?" That's not the only two logical possibilities there. It's just this false
There
dichotomy that
is
they must
a
introduce to try to justify the behavior, and the same thing when it comes to the suffering. God could have given, let's just grant for the sake of argument that there is this thing called free will. Okay. Now, obviously, I don't believe it's true, but let's just grant that for a second. Just because there can be free will doesn't mean you have to have earthquakes and children being born with cancer. The two
oh,
don't match up.
lion eating a zebra.
Exactly. You don't have to have, you can allow people to freely choose God or not choose God without having so many of the things that are happening. Children should never be subject to the terrible things that children suffer from adults, from the choices that adults are making. Natural disasters should never happen. They should never be part of the conversation just because of free will, because you can have free will without earthquakes. I mean, the two just doesn't even make sense, but they pretend that there's this false dichotomy
I
where it
think
has to be this way
I
to be this
I,
way.
I, th- I think what happened. I think what happened with Christianity that it does not update itself. For example, update itself. For example, in the past, it seems to me that they believed people used to believe that an action would have a consequence. For example, earthquake could be a punishment from the gods. So in the past, maybe it would make sense because people but people. I don't know if you notice that, but people still believe this kind of shit if you pay attention. For example, some people may believe that something bad happened to me because I did something bad with the other person. Like the universe is looking at you. Whenever you do something bad, the universe will punish you. Like it's a law. People still believe that. In Italy, I did my PhD in Italy. I remember there was an earthquake that killed half of the. There was a small. I used to live in a small town called Pitoli, a small town. Close to Pitoli was a very small town, very old. It was pretty old, like building pretty old. There was an earthquake. My small town has new building, so the building was able to stand because it was created to stand earthquake. But the other one was very old. Half of the small town was destroyed. There was a radio called Maria. The radio was accusing the earthquake was a result of the Italian. They were like too bad, so God decided to punish them. Like it's a Catholic country.
This is insane. And the other thing that blows me away is I find to be very frustrating at times. I try not to get too emotionally involved in this stuff because if you let it, it could really upset you. But like there was a natural disaster here last year where they had that flood in Texas, I believe it was, and a Christian camp that ran through this Christian camp, and like 75 little Christian girls got killed in this natural disaster because of this flash flooding, right? And I think that was in Texas. And the Christians were using this as a way to somehow say, oh, praise God. God is so good. Those little girls are in heaven with Jesus. Praise Jesus. And I'm thinking to myself, that is so insane. How could you possibly not say, if you believe that this God is true, is real, how can you not say, God, why would you take these little girls in such a terrible way if you wanted them in heaven with you? I have this conversation. I did an informal debate with a Christian here about a week ago or 2 weeks, whatever it was, right before I got sick with this cold. And we were talking about morality. And there's a thought experiment. It's called snap or drown, right? And so if I grant the Christian that the global flood had to happen, which is a big stretch because that's the dumbest story in the Bible. But let's just, we grant that the global flood happened, that God needed to wipe out everything. Why drown everybody? Why make a mother have to suffer as she's got 3 children and only 2 arms? You have to watch one of her children die first. Then she's going to watch the other children die. Then she's finally going to lose this child. Then she's going to drown. Why do this to the animals? It makes no sense. If they had to go away, why not just snap your finger, poof, everybody's gone, no problem. The world is instantly renewed. It doesn't have to be renewed with new people. Let Moses or Noah, who I guess is Noah and his family, re-inhabit the earth, but the animals could be brought back, everything. It just, the whole idea that, well, because the world was sinful, God needed to kill them. Let's drown them all. And that's a good way of doing it, you know?
There is a let's say cartoon. It's a let's say it's a atheist cartoon. They created in the internet. They did precisely like that. They took Superman and Batman. They're supposed to act as the Bible. Then, then in the cartoon, the Batman decided to drown everyone. So the guy that's supposed to be the bad guy asks, say it again? Because the guy could not understand that Batman was trying to kill. Let's flood everyone because they're pretty bad. Batman, I'm not going to save anyone anymore. I'm in Gotham City. I'm not the one to fight crime. Let's kill everyone. The guy said, like, say it again? Like the bad guy. He asked because they couldn't understand. Like, he's supposed to be the bad guy. Imagine it's God. Imagine our superhero like Batman, Superman act like God. I mean, they'd be
Yeah.
horrible. No one
Oh
would
yeah.
ever like this guy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's there's some people on the internet who do a really good job. I am gonna have to wind it down. I am losing my voice. But Justin has his name is Justin. He has a YouTube channel
I
called
think so.
Deconstruction.
I saw him atheist experience. I think he participated. Justin.
I think he is. Because Atheist Experience is Matt Dillahunty's deal, isn't it? With the
No, no,
line.
now, no, the De La Hunt is out now. Now
Oh,
they do a kind of they keep changing. Like some,
okay.
I think I saw Justy there. Justy, the guy with the beard, like
Yes. Yeah.
the big
Yeah.
hair,
He's got
beard.
a master's degree in, I believe, Old Testament studies. So he knows the
Yes, I
Bible
think I know him. I
really,
know.
really well.
Yes, I know. He knows a lot. I
Yeah.
think he know
He
about
does
as well
talk.
for the Quran and so on.
Yeah, he does a great job highlighting some of these things, and talking about this. And he has an analogy where he gets Christians to basically work their way into this corner where he gets them every single time, and it's he calls it the baby paste. If God told you to make baby paste, and
Yes, I saw some of the.
yeah, and the Christians will
I
every
think.
single time they'll
I
bite
think
that bullet.
I saw the hamburger made of children. Would you eat the hamburger? I think
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
that.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And I actually had a Christian say the same thing to me because I was talking, like I said, about a week or so ago, I was talking to a Christian about morality in the Bible, and I was explaining to him about how we understand morality through reason and through empathy, right? And we can look at human flourishing as an example, and what's worked and what hasn't worked historically to understand what we should do and shouldn't do, the behavior that's acceptable, and none of that lines up with the Bible. And the Christian was just trying so hard to defend it. And I went down the same road with the baby
Yes,
paste. I said, so if God told you to chop up little children into tiny little pieces, one finger at a time, would you do that? Would that be the right thing to do? And he's like, well, yes, if God said to do it. And I'm like, holy shit, there's literally
yes,
nowhere for the conversation to go. If a person's going to bite that rhetorical bullet, what do you say to somebody like that?
yes. Because sometimes I know that your voice is almost out, and there is this example as well. The atheist experience. The trick is the same. I have done this trick with a friend of mine. He's a Catholic. But I saw the atheist experience. They are talking to a Christian, the atheist experience. They first make a question. Do you believe that slavery is wrong? The guys say like, I think you should. The guys say things like, you should have slavery. But suddenly, the Matt, he decided to put the Bible and say, see, here in the Bible, it says it's like correct. Like the guy literally changed his mind. In the world, I have done a similar case. I have a friend. I know him for a very long time. We have a common friend that LGBT. We have more than one friend that they are LGBT. Uh, People pretend they are not LGBT, but everyone knows they are LGBT. I asked him like we have this friend in common, so I asked him, "Do you believe that to be a gay is wrong? Because since you have this friend in common, I thought he will not dare to say that's wrong, because you have several friends that they are gay." He said, "Ah, no, I don't have anything in common in problem with that." I told him, "But do you know that the Bible says that to be gay is wrong?" The guy like changed his mind, like when you say the Bible say that's wrong, they just change their mind, like
Yeah, again, this is one of the reasons why I think it's perfect evidence that we don't have free will. So our subconscious is doing all the work, and then it
So you
spits
are
out the
like
information.
Robert Sapolsky. You are like the same style of Robert Sapolsky, or like Richard Carroll.
Yes, yes.
Richard Carroll in the
Sapolsky's
middle.
great.
Richard Carroll. So you are in the middle. You are like Richard Carroll or Sapolsky?
I'm in the middle because I don't know. I don't know. I haven't spoken to Richard Carrier about free will. I
Because
would assume.
Carroll, according to his blog, he's like Daniel Dennett. He believes like there is a kind of freedom, like even if you do well, it's a kind of a partial free will, like you can have
Compatibilism.
part
Yep.
compatibilism, like
Yep.
in the case of
That's where I'm at. Yep. It's
Sapolsky like
supposed.
deterministic.
It's hard
Sapolsky like he
determinism.
does not believe at all in free will.
But now I have to admit that I haven't read all of Sapolsky's work. I've actually got one of his books that I intend to get into, but it's a
Determined or
very
behavior.
it's heavy reading. It's heavy reading, and I'm not in biology. This is a field I haven't really spent a lot of time in, so it's going to be heavy work for me to get through.
No,
But Sapolsky,
now I use chatbot. Like you can put the book on the chatbot. Like you go for a walk, you just talk to the chatbot.
interesting. I have to think about maybe doing that. But Sapolsky, he has hard determinism, but somehow he still believes that there's decision making processes that are going on there, and I don't know how he's put that all together, because it
No,
seems to me hard to.
he's a determinist. Like he does not believe that according to him, we don't have like you have zero. Anything that you do, according to him, can be explained by a sequence of events.
Yes, right,
So,
right.
according to his model, we are like he gives the example of the broken car. If a car he give an example. Suppose a car has a brake. The brake fails. Like he hit someone. He make a joke. You don't send the car to the hell of cars, like to burn the car forever. You fix the car and put the car on the street again. So he says the same, that when someone commits a crime, the person is broken. So in our current system, you decide to put the person in jail, they stay in jail forever. He said that you should fix people because people are determined.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with that. I have recently started doing talks about the justice system in America. It's really broken. There are other countries that are doing so much better when it comes to the prison system, and we see the results in recidivity, right? The how many people are actually returning to prison in America. It's upwards of about 80%, almost 80% of people that are incarcerated will end up back in prison I think it's within 5 years. And you have to think about, if we had any business model with a failure rate of 80%, they would go out of business
But
immediately. It would never be successful with something like that. And yet that's what our justice system is here in America. And it's astounding. And people say, well, there's nothing we can really do about it. But then you look at other countries like Norway, for example, their recidivity rate over that same time period, 2%, 2% compared to 80%. Huge, massive difference. It's not even like they're not even playing the same game almost. You know what I mean? The difference is so wide. So there are definitely programs that can be put into place. There's ways of effectively dealing with criminals. And it's not just locking them away, just locking them in prison for a period of time. Like you put a child on a timeout, that doesn't solve the problem. You've got to institute education. You've got to inform the individual, the child or the criminal, why their behavior is wrong. You also got to help them understand the personal motivation of why they want to do better, right? Like I was talking about before, my selfish motivation to live my best life includes my neighbor living his best life, right? Making sure my neighbor has enough to eat. That's how I make sure that I'm not going to get my food stolen. So we can teach the child, we can teach the criminal if they have the mental capacity to understand these things. Some criminal behavior is going to be based on a mental deficiency that cannot be fixed, at least not currently. Now, we may develop the technology at some point to tap into the brain and rewire some of these signals that are not connecting, which would be wonderful, but we're not there yet. So at some point, there are some people we may have to just set aside. But if we set them aside, we have to understand that we still need to treat them well to provide them with a certain amount of well-being, right? Not just lock them away in solitary confinement or something, but we need to provide a life for them to be morally justified, in my opinion. But what we
yes,
can't do, we can't have axe murderers running around the streets. We know that, right?
yes. Yeah, that's a very good conversation. I know about your voice, so I'm going to let you go. But if you want to go, I'd like to thank you for coming to my channel, for accepting to do the live on my channel. You can do a second party on your channel. I already accept. I do a pre-accept or any possible future invitation as a way to thank you to accept and to come to my channel. And in the future, I'll be glad to be on your channel, like doing a second part of the conversation.
Yes, brother. I really am grateful for the opportunity. I always relish a chance to speak to people who I respect. I've looked at
I think
I
there is a
I think it was
there was a problem. You should repeat again because your internet just
oh
gave a problem.
yeah, absolutely, brother. I just want to say I very much appreciate you bringing me on and letting me speak with you today. It's always a great pleasure for me personally to speak to people that I respect, and I have been really enjoying your content. I really especially liked what you just recently did. We touched on it today. You talked about AI and morality, and can we use AI to basically start to fill these roles of educator, teaching about morality? And I think there's a great conversation to be had around the uses that we can get out of AI, and it's been such a pleasure speaking to you today. I almost rescheduled with you because my voice is really shot, but I did not want to miss the opportunity. You know, I don't want you to feel like you're not a priority for me or I wasn't really excited about this opportunity and just call in sick. So I appreciate you bearing with me and your audience for bearing with my throat. I know it sounds really rough, but yeah, I would definitely be interested in having some future conversations with you. We touched on a few things today. This last topic about the justice system would be a great conversation to because it talks about morality. We could incorporate AI, the justice system, and we could really tie all that together, I think, to look at how to make significant changes for the better.
Perfect. So I think you know how to use I think you know how to use StreamYard. So I'm going to close the live, but I'm going to say hi, say goodbye to you in private. So do not close the browser. Some people close the browser. So thanks everyone for being here. I should remind you that this live will be available in more than 20 languages, which include Portuguese. The YouTube make a translation. When you speak in English, YouTube making the live available in more than 20 languages: Portuguese, French, and my guest today here, Daniel Leeroy, he has his own channel. I totally recommend you to go there. If he can correct me, but I think he has a focus also on outfit. I think fitting. I think you remember well. Some tips how to make exercise, so on. So I totally recommend you to follow his channel. It's on the description. In the future, I'm going to send him an invitation. When you subscribe to the channel, you're going to see his channel as well. Just subscribe to both channels and enjoy the content. So see you in the next live.